We'll get underway as soon as. Oh, okay. I'm looking forward to that. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Planning and Housing Committee meeting. First, I just want to acknowledge that Ottawa is located on unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. Il est important de souligner que la ville d'Ottawa se trouve sur un territoire non cédé de la nation algonquine Anishinaabe, dont la culture et la présence sont enrichies et continuent d'enrichir ces terres. I know that we've received regrets this morning from Councillor Kelly. Councillor Gower is signing on, I believe, as we speak. Councillor Johnson is maybe a little bit late as well, but I'll ask the clerk to do the roll call.
Councillor Brockington.
I'm here.
Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor Dudas.
Here.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor Lowe.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Here.
Councillor Truster.
Here.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Johnson.
Here.
And Chair Leeper.
Present.
You have quorum.
Thank you. And good morning, everyone. With those out of the way, let's make some magic happen. This is a public meeting to consider the comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as item 4.2 on today's agenda for the item just mentioned. Only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on April 26, 2023, please email or call the committee or council coordinator. Are there any declarations of interest this morning? See none. Are the minutes of meeting 6, Wednesday, April 5th, 2023 carried? Carried. So 2 substantial items on the agenda today. The first is the ministerial zoning order for 4085 Strandford Drive. I've asked staff to have a presentation for that one, so we'll hold that. And I know there's a technical motion that will be made as part of that as well. And the other item is the zoning bylaw amendment for 1420 Richmond Road, 365 Forest Street, and 2583 and 2589 Bond Street in Bay Ward. I know there's a technical motion on that. Can I ask Councillor Kavanaugh to please make the technical motion?
You may indeed. Okay. Whereas report AC 2023 pre-PS 0034, the report recommends council approve an amendment to the zoning bylaw number 28250 for 1420 Richmond Road, 365 Forest Street, and 2583 and 2589 Bond Street to permit a maximum height of 41 meters and amend performance standards for the development of 2 12-story buildings. And whereas document 3 of the report does not provide an exemption for open stairways, stoops, landings, steps, or ramps from table 65 bracket 5I of the zoning bylaw number 2008-250, and the proposal includes such features which project into the required yards. Therefore, be it resolved that the document 2 of the report details of the recommended zoning be amended by adding the following text as paragraph 3B triple I. Notwithstanding the provisions of the table 65.5I, an open stairway, stoop, landing, steps, or ramps may project to within 0 meters of a lot line in a front yard or corner side yard, and there is no projection limit for these features into the setbacks shown on schedules SYYY. And therefore, be it further resolved that document 3 zoning schedule be replaced with attachment 1 attached here too. And therefore be it further resolved that no further notice be given pursuant to subsection 3417 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 313. Thank you. I did ask questions myself because that just came up this morning. So feel free to ask questions if you don't understand it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kavanaugh. We don't have any delegations other than the applicants with us this morning. Tamara Nahal and Jamie Posen are here from FOTEN. If the committee is prepared to carry this item as amended, are you still needing to speak?
Just briefly, Chair, there was one piece of correspondence from the building next door, and I just wanted to ask staff if that has been dealt with, because it was to do with the differential in distance.
Staff are just getting prepared to answer.
Good morning. It's Allison Hamlin. I'm the acting manager for Development Review West. Did the correspondence come in directly to the committee?
Yes, I just saw it this morning.
Okay, we will respond. I'm sorry, I haven't seen it, and we'll respond in time for council for sure, and we'll get back to you, Councillor Kavanaugh.
No problem. Yeah, that's from the properties next door. So I just thought I'd make sure that was clarified. Okay, thank you.
So
Otherwise, I'm fine.
with certainly this looks like something that can be dealt with and responded to prior to the passage of this item at council. I did want to just make sure that committee members have it on the table before they vote, though, in case it changes their minds. So this has been received from which building? Which property is this, Teresa?
It's Osgood.
Okay.
It's the one that it's at 3360 Croydon.
Okay.
They own the property next door.
So very briefly, we've had correspondence from Osgood Properties, the owner of the neighboring property, who state to the east of the proposed development site, they state, we are concerned that this building wouldn't allow for the recommended 20-meter separation distance for high-rise buildings if we were to develop our property. Furthermore, we would ask the city consider the new high-performance design standards if this project would reach the site plan approval process. These standards will require sustainable roofs for all roofs over 500 square meters. Both roofs appear to meet these thresholds. So I just want to make sure that's on the table before you vote this morning. Are there any further questions for staff? See none. Is the Kavanaugh motion carried?
Carried.
The
Carried.
recommendation carried as amended?
Carried.
Carried.
We will move on, and Allison, I'll look forward to hearing how those discussions go. So that brings us back to the ministerial zoning order, on which we've asked staff to make a presentation. Oh, and sorry, there is a technical amendment on this that we'll put on the floor now. Councillor Gower or Vice Chair Gower, are you able to put that on the table now?
Yes, the technical amendment, whereas with respect to the report titled Minister Zoning Order 4085 Strandherd Drive, the asset management implications were provided after the public release of the report, and whereas city staff submitted revised asset management implications to insert into page 8 of the report, therefore be it resolved that with respect to the report titled Minister Zoning Order 4085 Strandherd Drive Planning and Housing Committee, accept the report as revised with the amended asset management implications section on page 8 of the report with the following: there are no asset management implications, be replaced with, the project has potential impacts on water, wastewater, stormwater, and transportation related services. A site plan control process is critical to ensure that there is sufficient infrastructure capacity available to support the development. On-site stormwater management is implemented, potential Jock River flooding is considered, and any off-site works that may be needed are identified and implemented as part of the project.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. So we'll deal with that amendment following the presentation and questions to staff. Good morning, Lily. I'm in your hands.
Good morning, Chair. Kelby is our file lead planner on this file, so Kelby will do the presentation. Thank you.
Great, good morning. So I guess we'll start with the site. So this is a presentation for 4085 Strandherd Drive, the Ministerial Zoning Order. Next slide, please. So 4085 Strandherd Drive is outlined in the red, shown here along the south side of Strandherd Drive and the east side of Laurier Road. Next slide, please. The site is currently undeveloped. This perspective is of the site from Laurier Road facing east. Next slide, please. The star with the arrow identifies the property location on Schedule B6 of the official plan, which is the suburban southwest transect, identifying the lands as a mixed industrial area, which provide a broader range of non-residential uses than industrial areas. This map also shows land use designations around the site, neighborhood to the north, east, and south, as well as an evolving neighborhood overlay corresponding to the identified future BRT terminus station identified with the small white circle there. A long-term care facility is regarded as an institutional use, and the OP prescribes criteria for site-specific amendments to the zoning bylaw to allow sensitive institutional uses where there are no health impacts from adjacent uses. Next slide, please. Here's a concept site plan placing the long-term care facility building facing Laurier Road. The owner is proposing a two-phase development. Phase 1 to construct a 192-bed, 4-story long-term care facility. Phase 2 may include 192 more long-term care beds or a range of ancillary uses such as a retirement home, residential apartment, and community-oriented commercial uses. Next slide, please. There are 2 properties adjacent to the subject site to the south that have a total area of 2.8 hectares and outlined in the dashed light blue line above. Staff recommend that should an MZO be issued for 4085 Strandherd Drive, staff shall conduct a city-initiated official plan amendment for the whole of the properties and to examine and recommend appropriate uses for any new designation. Next slide, please. So what is a Minister's Zoning Order, or MZO? An MZO may regulate the use of land, buildings, and structures anywhere in Ontario. If there is a conflict between the MZO and the municipal zoning bylaw, the MZO prevails. And consultation and engagement with the municipality and the public is at the discretion of the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and decided on a case-by-case basis. Next slide, please. The lands are currently zoned as development reserve. The applicant has requested a general mixed-use zone. However, staff recommends the appropriate zoning for the proposed long-term care home be the minor institutional zone, subzone A, as well as a site-specific exemption to allow up to 20 meters in building height. Next slide, please. The draft MZO also includes the exemption of the site plan control process for the development. Staff strongly recommend that the site plan control not be exempt through the MZO and recommend that the development proponent submit a proper site plan control application to the city. The report recommendation is that Planning and Housing Committee recommend council receive and approve this report including the city's response to the Minister's Zoning Order request regarding 4085 Strandherd Drive as soon as shown in document 2 of the report, and direct the General Manager, Planning, Real Estate and Economic Development to submit the city's response to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing with regard to the Minister's Zoning Order for 4085 Strandherd Drive. Next slide. And thank you.
Thank you very much to staff. May I just ask, as clearly and succinctly as possible, what is the committee being asked to vote on today?
To approve the draft response as attached.
So that's it's not necessarily, and for those watching, this is not about council approval of the development itself. Council will be voting on on sending document 2 back to the minister on this one. So take a look at what document 2 says. which contains some of our suggestions to the province as to how to handle this particular file. I think I would just like to ask Councillor Hill to weigh in on the development itself and whether there is a question about approval or anything on that.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, so certainly I'm not familiar with the MZO process myself, so I can speak a little bit to that if you wish. But I will talk in terms of the function of what would ultimately be seen here in Barrhaven and the site. And I can certainly speak to that from the perspective of the folks in Barrhaven that I've spoken to about this type of capability. So certainly there is a deficit. This is seen as a net positive. And from a location perspective, that intersection, just on the north side has a Viva retirement home. There's a pharmacy on the other side. So this is a reasonable type of place to have this go. Again, I'm not going to speak specific unless you ask, Mr. Chair, to the process, whether, routine zoning could have allowed for this to happen and such, but just from the purpose of, is this something that that would be probably a good fit in that area in the community? I think it would be, to be honest. I liked the concept of kind of the mixed zoning piece that was spoken to by staff. I think that there is opportunity here, from an intensity perspective to kind of build on this and to make sure that this increases from, a functional purpose of having potentially the opportunity to expand with some mixed retirement home / long-term care facility, or potentially some other complementing retail or things like that in there. So I think there's some good to be done in this. It's just a question of process, but I don't know if you have any other questions.
No, I just, would it be fair to suggest that this isn't a controversial development file. What we're really talking about here today is more the process that we're undergoing. So putting that on the table, I'm going to move to our first questions for staff. Vice Chair Gower.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this is super interesting. It's not every day that we get an MZO, so I'm curious mostly about the process. And although this is the first that we've had in front of committee in the time I've been here, I know there's been other municipalities. So is this typical that we'd be asked to respond to the MZO? And is it typical that applicants in Ontario would be seeking an exemption not only to the zoning, but to the site plan control or other review processes?
Chair, so Councillor is correct that this is the first MZO that we have received from the ministry. Staff did talk to a number of other municipalities. So far, Toronto has received the most of the MZOs. I think there are more than 20 of them there. Kingston has received 2 so far, and some other cities as well. There's no prescribed process in terms of how the ministry will conduct the issuance of the MZO. In certain cases, they would contact the municipality looking for a technical response. In this case, we're given roughly a few weeks at the time when we were contacted, but there was no specified timeline. In other cases, like City of Toronto, they had a few MZOs that they were given like a couple days to respond. So staff responded quickly, then they had to report back to their planning committee and the council after the fact. And there are also cases where the city was not contacted at all and the MZO was just issued. Councillor, I forgot the second question you're asking.
Well, I think you've answered most of it. I think, is it typical from what you're aware that they would be asking for exemptions to site plan or other review processes, or is this unusual in any way?
So the MZO authority has existed in Ontario for over 20 years. It was used before. I think one of the good example people often refer to would be the Lake Elliott, when the shopping mall collapsed and the province issued MZO just for the public safety perspective. And in general, the planning profession's understanding was that was the intent of the MZO when it was originally created. However, in the recent years, the current provincial government created this enhanced MZO, which would give the minister the authority to exempt site plan. So there have been cases in other cities that the site plan was exempted.
And I think the points that staff have made in the letter, the response letter, are fine. They're good. And I'm glad that staff is raising these points. Based on the experience you've seen in other municipalities, how likely is it that the minister will take our concerns seriously, or is this more of a, I'm worried this is just more of a formality, and no matter what we say, they'll just push forward. I guess that's what I'm getting at, and looking for any context you can give our committee as to what we can expect.
Chair, this is a tricky question because staff would not have the ability to predict what the minister will do, and the minister can do whatever he wants to do. But staff think it is important for staff and the council to raise our concern from the municipality's perspective.
Okay. There was a pre-consultation meeting with the applicant. Has there been any formal, or actually has there been any informal meetings or follow-ups between the applicant and staff between that pre-consultation and when we received notice of the MZO?
No, I have been in contact with the applicant since then, but the MZO came in prior to further discussions between the city and the applicant.
Okay, and what's the city's usual process when a proponent brings forward a long-term care development project? Is there any prioritization or any kind of rush review that an applicant would receive due to the healthcare focus of that application?
So Chair, it is not unusual that we would treat a healthcare facility or long-term care facility or affordable housing projects as a priority. Apparently, there are multiple priorities in the office, but we do our best. And that also depends on our, how the objectives we're trying to achieve. And a lot of time it is the deadline for the funding in order to, for the site plan approval in order to receive the funding. So in all the cases, we work with the applicant to achieve their target.
Okay, one last question, because I know there's a lot of hands up. If site plan control is exempted, staff have indicated there's concern, potential issues around, say, stormwater. If this goes ahead and there are negative impacts to stormwater infrastructure, who holds the liability on that? Is there any city liability? Is there provincial liability because they superseded the usual processes? What would happen?
Again, Chair, this is a tricky question because this is the first time we're dealing with this situation. It might be worth mentioning a situation happened in Toronto a few years ago, which was for a long-term care facility as well, and the site plan was exempted. The chief building official of Toronto refused to issue the building permit because the building permit application did not comply with the building code and the city standards. So based on our conversations, it was a lot of work created by this in order to, build a consensus and to bring the project to a acceptable standard and meet their timeline.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Councillor Brockton.
Good morning, Chair. It's still early, so I'm going to walk through my understanding of this application just to make sure I have everything correct. A company called Southbridge Care Homes wants to build long-term care home units, and they have found that there's a construction subsidy available from the Ministry of Long-Term Care Homes to build. That's my understanding. How did we get to the point where the ministry has approached the city of Ottawa? Did the Ministry of Long-Term Care Home raise to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, hey, we have a company that wants to build in Ottawa, they're seeking this grant, the land is not zoned for this, we need to get involved here to speed up the process? Ms. Zhu, can you confirm whether I have this correct or not?
Chair, so after the pre-consultation, staff was no longer involved with or in discussions with the applicant. So, but the applicant can, do whatever they wish to and contact and lobby whoever they need to.
But we've been approached by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, correct?
Mr. Chair, if I may add, in the correspondence that we've received from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, it is my understanding that it was raised with them by the Ministry of Long-Term Care, as the councillor has alluded to.
And their role in all of this is to confirm there's an applicant who's applied for a grant through the other ministry, and they're recognizing that we have 130 days left to get shovels in the ground, despite they need zoning, they need a site plan, there's an appeal period in there, we need public consultation in this neighborhood. This is going to be fast track. So do those steps just get overlooked, or do we still have a very clear process of what this file has to go through in this community?
Chair, if the minister's zoning order is issued by the ministry eventually, that will override any city policies. So no zoning application process is required, nor a public consultation is required, or the appeal period. So zoning is done.
Okay.
The same thing for the site plan. For the site plan exempt, the applicant can go to the building permit stage right away.
Okay. So the ministry gets our letter and they say, thank you, that's all, or thank you, we'll take this into consideration. They issue the order and the applicant can go straight to filing for building permits?
Correct, if the site plan is exempt.
Okay, all right. Well, if I was the counselor in this neighborhood, I don't know what Councillor Hill's been doing. I'd be informing my community that this is happening, just to make people aware that there could be an entire local process stepped over. It's a very rare situation. I've not seen it before, but I think the minister will approve this. They're laser focused on housing. We need more long-term care homes. Obviously, if there's a grant available, they want to facilitate this in the province. I appreciate staff bringing this to committee and making us aware and seeking our approval for the steps before us. But I just needed to make sure I understood the exact process and how we got here. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Kitts.
Thank you, Chair. So we have two LTC applications that are in progress in Orleans, one in my ward, Noella Leclerc, and another one in Councillor Lulas at Family Laporte. And when they met with us initially, they said, we're going to be working in a tight timeline because it's tied to funding. And I said, have you mentioned that to staff? I think that that's important to make clear. So I guess, I know you said you can't sort of predict when these MZOs are going to come forward and how, they're addressed at the provincial level, but could we anticipate that we will see MZOs with those two applications?
Again, Chair, it is a possibility.
Okay, and I think my colleagues have asked sufficiently, but I'm wondering what happened in those 6 months. Like, was there any correspondence with staff to say, this isn't moving as fast as we need it to, we're concerned about the timeline, and then the MZO happened? Or was it really, you had the pre-consult, there was some back and forth, and then MZO just sort of came out of nowhere?
Yes, thank you, Chair. There really wasn't any sort of correspondence following that pre-consult. It happened, I guess it was in the fall, and then the next correspondence was the request for the MZO.
Okay, and I did read that it said, had they followed sort of the typical process, staff could have prioritized it, given that it was tied to funding. So in the case of the two in Orleans, is staff prepared to sort of try and meet those aggressive timelines?
Yes, Chair, we believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kitts. Councillor Dudas.
I'm trying to understand. I really appreciated all the background staff provided on what had transpired with this development. And I guess I'm trying to understand if we, Councillor Kitts had led into this, but should expect more of this in respect not only to long-term care, but with all the changes the province has instituted in terms of affordable housing and, building housing quicker, should we expect that the ministries will do MZOs more frequently to bypass municipal processes to get things built quicker?
Again, Chair, it's hard for city and the staff to predict what the minister will do. But as a matter of the fact, over the past few years, there are definitely more MZOs that have been issued than the previous 20 years.
So, and I know I put you on the spot because I'm asking you to read the minds of the province, but I think we should be prepared that this might come to pass as a municipality, and we should make sure that our residents are aware too that a lot of the onus lies with the province in terms of these developments. I guess I'm also wondering too, they've asked for our municipal input, technical input on this. Do you think it will hold any weight? I'm once again asking you to read their minds, but they're asking for your opinion, but they're saying we're going to do this and we're going to do it faster. Do you think that your input will be taken with the amount of weight it deserves, or do you think they're just doing it as a checking the box exercise?
Chair, I think both the municipality and the province, they share a lot of common public interest. So I do believe that the province is interested to hear the voice from the municipality. However, in the same time, I understand the minister has other considerations and priorities. So that's why we cannot predict that they will fully accept our response and the comments.
I appreciate that, and I hope that is the case. I would say,
sorry if I may, I think Mr. Herwire was also looking to jump in on that.
Yeah, no, just building on Lily's response, had a discussion with Mr. Mark, and while there's no requirements in the Planning Act to have that consultation, we have heard the minister and others in the ministry stating their strong preference to have municipal council feedback before the zoning order is issued. As Lily pointed out, that doesn't always happen. Certainly there's an advantage in perhaps one of the cases outlined of unintended consequences if they don't consult with us. The zoning they put in place may not be appropriate. They may not be able to get a building permit because they're not the experts in zoning. So I think it's important for us to communicate those issues, whether the details of the zoning or site plan considerations. If it doesn't go to site plan, it can create other permit requirements through possibly more lengthy time frames in terms of road cuts and other permits that would be required in absence of a site plan. So I think it's important that we do weigh in when we have the opportunity.
and I agree. I mean, we know our city better than the province does in terms of planning, but all other aspects. And this might be tromping on Councillor Gower's question before, so I apologize if I'm getting you to repeat this. In some respects, by us as a municipality providing our input, we're basically papering them up. We're saying these are our concerns, these are our the benefits of this project. We're sharing our thoughts. What happens if they disregard them? I'm not talking about this project specifically, but they disregard it on any MZO. They move forward. We then as a city now have to inherit an issue, as Councillor Gower said, with storm drainage. There's an issue that arises from a development because they disregarded our expert opinions, not mine, yours, Lily and team. Can we then go back and ask for compensation, or is there any kind of legal action we can then take to say we had indicated that this was going to come back to haunt us and our residents? Can we get any kind of remittance?
Chair, I'll refer to legal services to respond.
Good morning. Sorry, I have a spring cold. Can you hear me, Mr. Chair? Okay. Chair, I don't believe that there has been an issue where these legal steps that the councillor has talked about has occurred in terms of understanding what the process would be for remittance or where liability would occur. From a statutory perspective, there is no process or criteria for these types of applications at this time. And as well, there is no process or criteria for steps if something is to go wrong. As Ms. Sue has said, in Toronto, we certainly have a situation where there were significant delays as a result of the application and the order not meeting city standards in order to have the issuance of a building permit. And so I would anticipate that in such instance, if there are issues with respect to building permit or any issuance, that the minister would speak with staff and we could look to the Toronto incident there. But at this time, there has not been an example for us to look to in terms of liability and how this matter would be pursued legally should something go wrong in the future as a result of one of these orders.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Troster.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if staff have any sense of how much time this order is actually saving, or how much the applicant perceives how much time they might be saving on this. Is it a matter of weeks, months?
We were contacted by the minister's office in early March. At that time, we asked them how long we can take our time to respond. They said a few weeks. Then we did a follow-up to let them know that we intend to report to planning committee today and to seek council's final approval next week. And they acknowledged that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think we all, especially with their zoning bylaw review coming up, we need to think about what processes we can tighten because they're facing the reality that we could lose a lot of really important control and autonomy over development in our city. So, you know, I understand that cities are technically creatures of the province. We hear this all the time, every time the province wants to interfere in our affairs. But, you know, I'm just curious at the end of the day, how much time this is really saving the applicant while also preventing us from doing a certain amount of due diligence. And I think we should just take this as a warning sign when we do our own zoning bylaw review for us to really think about what can be tightened and what can't be, because I do worry about the province coming in and just, you know, ordering us to do things, and then, as Councillor Duda said, leaving us to deal with potentially problematic impacts, whether that's encroaching on the green belts, or in this case, you know, potential issues with stormwater. So, yeah, I guess it's more of a comment than a question. But thank you to staff for explaining this so well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. Councillor Curry.
I certainly want to concur with everything Councillor Troster just said. I think though, the question I was hoping I'd get that answer to from Councillor Troster though was, if they hadn't gone the MZO route and they'd instead said, okay, we'd like to build a long-term care facility here, and they started that process, how long would it have taken compared to this route? Because the criticism that's coming at municipal councils is that we take too long, the city takes too long, municipal councils take too long, we put up too many roadblocks, everything grinds to a halt. So they're tired and sick of us, and they just want to ram these things through. That's the message I think we get on this. We're seeing it now with school boards. They're tired of school boards spending too much time on the wrong things. And, you know, they're going to give provincial direction too, or else get rid of school boards. So my question is, how much time would it have taken otherwise? They would have put in an application, say in March, and then when would this be built compared to this route?
So, Chair, the applicant met with the staff in about November 2022. So they had, you know, to date, almost 6 months or 5 months to submit the applications. And the fast tracking of priority application, it depends on the collaboration between the applicant and the staff. You know, it's the quality of the applications as well as the team working on the application as well. So it's a little bit difficult to say, you know, how long it will take us, but we are confident, if they prepare a proper application, like say if they submit a site plan application in April or May, we will treat it as a high priority. In fact, the Bill 109, which will come into place, does require a zoning approval in 3 months and a site plan approval in 2 months. So that's something we are already prepared to work on.
So I think, I know it's hard for you to predict, but the end answer here is that this is a faster route. Like they would get priority. The message to you as planning staff is this is a priority, treat it as such. Other priorities that maybe we had set are now put aside. This is sort of, it's a smart move on the province's part if they want something done fast. And they're using it. So, not that I'd vote against this or anything, but it's just, we may see more of these, who knows, but this is the way of the future, I think.
If I can just follow up with some clarity around that question, though, the pre-consultation that the applicants did, when was that?
I believe it was October.
Okay. And what was the guidance that staff provided them coming out of that pre-consultation?
That there would be, generally the staff was supportive of a change of use to that site to accommodate that use, but identifying that there were changes required to the official plan and zoning for the site.
And did you provide specific guidance with respect to how to get the application relatively quickly into a position where staff would be able to approve it or recommend approval of it?
That wasn't something that we had discussed in the pre-consult, although that is something that is really expected of the applicant when they're putting together their submission. We work with them to make sure that everything that we need is in place.
Chair, just to add that staff provided a list of required studies just to guide the application. And we also provided a preliminary comments based on the pre-consultation meeting.
Yep.
And we always welcome the applicant to contact us later if they have questions on the preliminary comments or study list or on the process, but that didn't happen.
And did they have those comments and checklist in hand when, by the end of October? Mid-November?
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
End of October. Fantastic. Sorry, Councillor Johnson.
No, not at all. I just want to pick up on what Councillor Curry was curious about, because in my mind, it's not only savvy of the ministry, but it's also savvy for the applicant. And so now we're having a situation where an applicant perhaps has superseded processes that could be really important to the city to get where they want to go. Is there a financial implication for the city of Ottawa when the site plan is skipped? I believe I read that.
Yes, so the obvious impact is we don't have the chance to collect the application fees. And where the planning services is self-covered and our fees cover our resources. So all the time we spend on the report and communication, it's not getting covered. If the site plan is exempted as well, we don't have the chance to collect the engineering design, inspection fees, which another big ticket for our budget. And also the site plan gives the city the authority to take securities to ensure all the safety construction on the site. And if it is exempted, we're unclear how that is achieved.
So just so I understand, I hear that a lot of perhaps those fees are cost recovery. So overall, are we experiencing a net loss when we take all of these opportunities to collect fees away? Or is it just cost recovery for labor?
I believe it is a net loss, but I'll ask Mr. Moody to chime in, please.
Mr. Chair, we would not have direct, costs going outside of the city, but we do have staff costs that are, captured through that cost recovery. So, with respect to the fees that we do collect, 90% of our costs go towards our staff and resources. I don't know if that answers your question.
I guess I just need to say, you are putting staff time against this, right? Yes. Then you get your fees. Is it neutral at that point, or is there a net loss even on top of when you're compensating for those hours?
In a traditional, our goal is total cost recovery with respect to our application fees. And while any particular application may provide a net positive or a net negative overall as a whole, we target cost recovery. I think in 2022, we did have a slight deficit because of a dip in application numbers, but on a site specific application, overall, we on an average, we do achieve cost recovery.
Okay, so I'm hearing that there might not be a huge financial impact if we skip site plan at the onset, unless everything goes sideways, and then that those hours are continuing to be unfunded through fees.
That's correct.
Okay, so I just wonder, and I wonder if I think there will be a presentation, or perhaps I should be doing more digging about how we are responding to Bill 109. I know we've had some memos. Are we going to be bringing that forward to committee as well with these new timelines in place?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we will be bringing a report forward in the next couple months on all the implications on Bill 109 and Bill 23 on the development review process. So you'll be seeing that very soon.
Okay, tremendous. So I think some of these questions will come up again when we do that reflection. I know that in some of the projects that I've seen through my ward, I've asked Allison, is there like a Tim's Express line for certain applications for certain reasons, or does it just go in a queue? And I'm sure that's all part of what you're reviewing in this process. So we'll have an opportunity to speak about that at another time. Sounds like time is of the essence, however, as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We do have, I won't call it an express process, but we have a high economic impact stream. We have a social stream where those projects do get prioritized currently. And in this case, there's a funding deadline as committee's aware of August 31st. So this would obviously be a priority project.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions from members. It is not ideal that the province is creating municipal zoning, bypassing the local expertise that our staff have, the understanding of our specific context. I'm very supportive of the proposed response that staff are going to make, which is to provide a nuanced look at what that zoning should be, as well as to request that it not be exempted from site plan. And I do have the confidence that if the minister chooses not to exempt this from site plan, that our staff are going to ensure that this is wrapped up in time to meet the funding deadline. I do understand that this is an application that has a particular funding deadline attached. I understand why that might go through the ministerial zoning order process rather than our normal municipal processes, but I don't think any of us would like to see that become the norm. It does make it more critical that we have the comprehensive zoning bylaw review done and complete so that the zoning in the city reflects what people want to actually see built. It does make it that much more important that when we're considering applications as a committee, that we are being rigorous with respect to understanding the planning grounds upon which something should or should not be supported. And it does mean that through the course of site plan that we are not working in an obstructionist way, but that we are working in partnership with developers to ensure that site plan accomplishes what it's supposed to accomplish. And those are all things upon which we'll be working through the course of this term. So certainly the proposed response, which is what we're voting on today, has my full support. Is that carried? Thank you very much. And sorry, was there a technical motion? Sorry, is there a technical motion? Is the technical motion carried on that one? It is amended, carried. All right, back into the agenda. Thank you very much for joining us, Councillor Hill. What do we got? What's the rest of the meeting? Let's make some more magic happen. There are no in-camera items of which I'm aware. We have no items, information previously distributed. There are no notices of motion for subsequent meetings that we've thus far received. Does anyone have anything? Seeing nothing. Inquiries, are there any inquiries? None were submitted prior. Other business, we have no other business. Adjournment, meeting is the meeting adjourned?
Meeting's adjourned. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, members.
Thanks.